I'm here today with apparently one of my hottest takes, which is the fact that I really like Ghost Diana in Crown Season 6, Part 1.
You know, I loved you so much. So deep. So painful too. Be so forever with me, Cole.
No, it won't.
Imagine you've had that thought already.
Crown Season 6 Part 1 has a massive amount of problems. It does feel like a soap opera at times. The pacing is all over the place until Diana passes away. My biggest issue with this season is that it's fictionalizing and adding really odd, bizarre elements that didn't exist in real life. For example, Princess Diana tragically passing away in a car accident wasn't enough drama apparently, so they added the idea that Dottie actually proposed to her just to make it more tragic.
To which I hope you will indeed tell me yes.
No.
According to Paul Burrell, formerly butler to the late princess, she once quipped, quote, "I want another marriage like I want a bad rash." While there's no solid evidence of any engagement, it's possible that Dottie had wedding bells in mind.
Taking one of the most tragic stories, if not the most tragic story involving the royal family, and having to add more fictional, almost sensationalist drama does feel weird. So yes, it's a season that is plagued full of problems. For some reason, the thing everyone seems to be getting hung up on is Ghost Diana. And hot take, not only is it something that I feel the need to defend, I actually really like it. In fact, it's probably the best scenes, if not the only scenes that really left an impression on me in this season of The Crown. I just want to clarify something and clear the air. When I say Ghost Diana, I mean the sort of like mental image that certain characters have and these imaginary conversations they have with a visualization of Diana.
Be so forever with me, Cole.
No, it won't.
I do not think that the writers intended for us to actually see her as like an ooga booga supernatural ghost, and this seems to be something that a lot of audience members are missing, and that seems to be why the show is getting laughed at. There are genuinely like media critics out there, journalists, people that have podcasts that genuinely watched The Crown Season 6 Part 1 and went, oh, the show wants us to believe that this is an actual ghost.
There are these scenes in this season where Elizabeth Debicki is playing Diana's ghost. I think playing anyone's ghost is insensitive because you can't possibly talking about anything that is true.
We've lost a grasp of reality. What people loved about this is how closely it mirrored historical events. We're now talking about the supernatural.
Not to paint these people as stupid, but this is not a supernatural show. This is not a surprising Sixth Sense sort of twist. This is a metaphor for grief and kind of the idea that you want to have a last conversation with someone. Something that Elizabeth Debicki, the woman playing Diana, has actually clarified.
This is how I conceptualize it. When you lose a person, the first thing you would give anything to do is speak to them again, right?
And but then, it's not like a ghost, like an apparition who's half visible.
No,
it's
like
sort of a vision or an imagining of a conversation you might have.
We're now talking about the supernatural.
These media critics are like, oh, I didn't realize this show was like a supernatural show. I didn't realize that we were going into this silly, stupid territory. Are they running out of ideas? They're adding ghosts? That seems really disrespectful.
It's sort of like when a ghost comes to a TV show, it's sort of like when you were a kid and you were writing a short story and then you're like, and then I woke up and it was all a dream.
Yeah. So true, yeah.
It's
like, what media diet are some of these journalists on? It just comes off really ignorant and silly. Calling her Ghost Diana is a funny sort of way to explain what's going on, but really all this is, really all these scenes of Ghost Diana are just characters that are laced with guilt, basically imagining what they would say to her if she was still here or what they wanted to say. It's sort of a conversation with their own mind, their own subconscious. You are not meant to be sitting there going, oh my god, they've brought ghosts into the show. Where's this show going to go next? Are they werewolves? Pickles, don't play with that. Naughty. Naughty, 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 naughty. Sorry for the disruption there. Now look, you're allowed to not like these scenes. You're allowed to say they're not subtle. You're allowed to say, oh, I really didn't appreciate the hand-holding of these characters' emotions. You know, I didn't need the Queen sort of going over how she wishes things were different. I didn't need Prince Charles sort of apologizing and clarifying that he did always love her and that his life might actually be easier though now that she's gone. Like, I didn't need to be handheld through their emotions. If that's your criticism of Ghost Diana, that's totally valid. If you just felt like it was really on the nose, really unsubtle, and you didn't need it, sure, fine. But if your interpretation of Ghost Diana is, oh, she's a literal ghost, this show has jumped the shark, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if your thoughts during this season were, oh my God, they've jumped the shark, what's next? Aliens. I don't know what to tell you. I'm actually kind of stunned that people are having this misread. This isn't just your like dumb coworker who has the media literacy of like a 7-year-old. These are well-paid like media journalists. These are people that engage in a lot of art and are somehow just thinking that this show has totally lost the plot.
Did Peter have a psychotic break whilst writing this current and final season? Did Peter just go, F it all to hell? I am going rogue.
I think...
And you know what the final season of The Crown needs? Ghost Diana. Because when they started mentioning Ghost Diana, and now I realise I blocked out Ghost Dodie. There's Ghost Dodie. The Crown, the documentary The Crown, have decided to on her memory and put words in her mouth as a ghost.
Peter Morgan has actually released a comment on Ghost Diana.
Ghost Diana.
And
it's James, everybody. Yeah.
He has said that I never imagined it as Diana's ghost in the traditional sense. It was her continuing to live vividly in the minds of those she has left behind.
Well, I mean, making her appear beside them as an apparition does give the illusion of ghost.
Again, you're allowed not to like it. I do. I actually really like it. If your takeaway, though, is, oh my God, they're bringing supernatural elements into what was meant to be a historically accurate show, you've missed the point entirely. And all these critics just sound so smug and so arrogant. And like, what were the writers thinking? Oh my God, what were the writers thinking? So desperate for like content and clicks. Surely these people are being intentionally ignorant. Like, they have to be, right? How are you missing this? Like, it's obviously not like an actual ghost. Prince Charles doesn't get up after his conversation with Ghost Diana and then go, oh my God, we need to review the camera footage. There was a ghost. Can you see it? Like, this doesn't turn into a ghost show. He doesn't call the Ghostbusters and go, yo, my dearly departed ex-wife that I cheated on is like haunting me and making me feel bad. Make it stop.
Something strange.
It's just guilt. It's just a metaphor for grief. They're just having conversations with themselves. And on top of that, and the reason I like it, is that this apparition, this ghost version of Diana, which isn't a ghost, is different depending who she's talking to. To the show's credit, it actually feels like rather subtle writing. When she speaks to Prince Charles, the things she says and the way she acts is how Prince Charles would ideally want her to act and look back on events, right? He treated her like absolute shit and ran off with Camilla, and the conversation she gives him is way nicer, way more empathetic, and just so overly understanding. It's this like manic pixie dream girl version that Charles has of Diana in his grief state. You are not meant to see this as the actual ghost of Diana, like giving the audience empathy for Prince Charles and like making us empathize and like want to forgive him. You are meant to see the guilt come out on his end, and it's basically him having a conversation with how he wishes Diana was. Similarly, the Queen also feels bad for sort of exiling and chastising Diana throughout her royal life. And her conversation with Diana is one where this version of Diana that she's conjuring up out of grief basically forgives her and gives her a bunch of understanding. When in reality, the real Diana that isn't a figment of their imagination or their grief-ridden state would not give them this level of understanding. And I don't get how people are missing this. And it's like the one thing that I thought was really, really well written in the show, this idea that we get to see basically how these two characters that are laced with a bunch of guilt for how they've treated Diana wish she saw their sort of version of events. And the tragedy there is she obviously didn't, right? Like, the real Diana would not be seen there being like, oh, well, you have an easy life and I'm gone now and we tried our best and I really did love you, by the way. It's such a clear stroke of Prince Charles's ego, even in his grief-ridden state. I just don't know how people went, oh yeah, this is the accurate ghost of Diana. If Diana came back as a ghost, this is what she would be saying. Sort of showing how self-involved these characters are and how they're kind of wishing Diana was a certain way even after her death. And on top of that, they're haunted, not by an actual supernatural presence that's banging and clanging pots and pans to keep them up at night like Paranormal Activity, but just these memories and this guilt that lingers. That's why the final shot of this season is the Queen kind of looking over her shoulder. It's not because she thinks there's an actual ghost of Diana in the room. It's this idea of like, I feel watched, I feel unsettled, I feel icky after how everything's gone. And these podcasters being so either unintentionally or intentionally obtuse and obnoxious and being like, this show's lost the plot, this show's jumped the shark, how absurd, how silly, what are these guys doing? We could write it better. Princess Diana the musical was more accurate. It's like, yes, like, how many audience members at home actually thought this was a ghost? Like an actual ghost that could like interact with the world and had its own consciousness? Like, no, it's a figment of their imagination. And like, I don't know how people are missing this. And again, if you have your issues with how unsubtle those scenes are, go nuts. Absolutely fair enough. But like, Ghost Diana and Ghost Dottie are not like hanging out in ghost clubs and ghost cafes after the credits roll, all right? It is figments of imagination. It is sort of conversations you're having with yourself with grief. They have clarified that, the actors and the writers. If I was the writer or if I was Elizabeth Debicki, I would be so like insulted and frustrated with what actually came out as great scenes being misinterpreted this hard. That scene on the plane with Charles and Diana is actually heartbreaking. It's sad with Diana. It is sad for Prince Charles. It's this weird delusional state he's in where he feels like this is the conversation he would have had with Diana if she was still around. And the tragic thing is neither of them ever would have actually reached that level of understanding if she was alive or even if she was a ghost, which she isn't. She's not a ghost. All right, thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day.